Right. Good morning, everybody. So this is the meeting of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Housing and Communities Committee. And I'd like to begin by welcoming members of the public and the press who've joined us today in Huntingdon, and also those watching on the live stream. The Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and tweet during the meeting. And can I ask, though, that everyone present turns their mobile phones to silent? Let me just check that I have done just that as well. I have, jolly good. Yeah, so mobile phones on silent while the meeting's taking place, please. There's no fire drill scheduled, so if it does sound, then we will be leaving the meeting. And I would remind members and officers that the meeting will be recorded. So part one, governance items. So apologies for absence. Yes, do we have any apologies for absence, please? Thank you.
Okay, apologies received from Councillor Denise Laws, substituted by Councillor Chris Bowden, and Councillor Lewis Herbert, substituted by Mike Davey, and apologies from Councillor Marco Ceres.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much to those who are substituting, and welcome today. So we're moving on. So does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory pecuniary interest in relation to today's agenda? No? And we'll note that. Thank you. So moving on to item 1.2, which is the approval of the minutes of the meeting on the 14th of November 2022. And we're being asked to confirm these as an accurate record. If any member wishes to raise any questions in the accuracy of the minutes, can you indicate so now? No? Okay, so we've got to see no objections. So are we in agreement that we'll take the minutes as approved? Agreed? Okay, agreed unanimously, thank you. And do members have any comments on the action log, please?
No actions from the last meeting.
No actions from last time. Jolly good. Thank you very much indeed. So moving swiftly on to item 1.3, which are public questions. And I don't believe we have any public questions.
No public questions.
No public questions, right. And so part two is the programme delivery, and we're starting off with the affordable housing programme and the update on implementation. So I will ask Asma Ahmed Pierce, who's the housing programme manager, to introduce the report, and Usma is joining us online. Good morning, Usma.
Good morning, Councillor. Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you for letting me zoom in today. Right, I will start off with the update on the implementation. Just one point to start off was, in the last report, Middlemore Road was named as the units that were being changed from social to affordable. That's not correct. There are two different sites with places for people at Luminous Phase 1 and 2. This was due to the contractor being insolvent and new contractor providing new costings. The grant has remained the same, but unfortunately, they're looking to change it from social to affordable rent. The loss of units is considered more of a major loss than the change of tenure. I will move swiftly on to the number of units. 499 homes have been completed as of the end of the calendar year. There have been a few slippages along the way, with many of my contractors and colleagues saying that the weather, laying down utilities, COVID-19 and long lead-in times for materials have caused many slippages, and also the increases in costs. So many of the completions that I was expecting at the end of last calendar year have been pushed due to that to early this 2023 or later. To make councillors aware, the deed of novation is still outstanding with Sage. We're waiting for internal approvals from them. We don't anticipate any issues. And with Northminster, the deed of covenants was agreed and signed on the 19th of December 2022. We're just now waiting to have a deed of variation on the permitted disposal element of the site. and we will speak to CKH in the next few weeks to confirm moving forward on from that. I have no further updates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, could you just clarify the number of units that will be that won't be social rent, but will now be affordable rent?
Just the 4.
Just 4 of them. Okay.
Just 4.
Thank you very much. And my understanding is that further subsidy to allow them to stay as social rent actually would have bumped up the average intervention cost, beyond what is deemed to be acceptable to government. So
That is correct.
Thank you very much, Osma. Are there any questions? Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much, Chairman. In Appendix 2, I was interested to note the final completion date expected for the Great Haddon Yaxley CKH development is 30th of November 2024. Now, I had been under the impression, which may have been an incorrect impression, that it was our intention to try and have all completion dates by the end of March 2024, by the end of the financial year 23-24. Am I to understand that, given the very real difficulties that there are in the sector at the moment, which have already been mentioned, that target date has now quietly been dropped, and that we are now being slightly more flexible about final completion dates? And if so, are we now talking about the end of 24-25 as being a target for completion of everything?
Thank you. Very good question, which I can't answer. So, Usma, please.
Unfortunately, yes, Councillor Bowden, that is correct. We are having major problems with many of the issues that I've mentioned already. Also, we do have Northminster, which is one of our biggest sites, which was looking to finish at 24 or 25 as well. So we have to be a little bit flexible with dates. The problem is obtaining materials, which is causing a great problem, actually, and that is causing delays on completions.
Yeah, please do come back.
May I just ask, Bridget, if it's possible then for that to be formally recorded in the minutes, that we are now looking at 31st of March 25 as being the completion date for all the projects that we've got? It would be helpful, I think.
Can I confirm with Usma, is that a reasonable position for us to?
I think that is, with the circumstances involved, yes.
Okay, so if I could just pick up on some of those points. So, even though I'm aware that there are problems with materials now, I am aware that these are quite specific to certain materials, and it's quite a changing picture. So I don't think we can be saying that there's a problem with all building materials. I know last year there was a problem with fencing panels, there's a problem with cement. I'm not aware that that's an ongoing problem. So, is our expectation that these problems with obtaining materials are not going to be resolving over what's actually quite a long time period? Because one would kind of hope that the market would start sorting this out, actually, and that things would get easier, and that those completion dates might come back a bit. I mean, I just wonder whether excuses are being made for slow delivery of some of these houses and blaming it on materials, when actually it's more to do with the market and the market uptake of housing. Would you like to comment on that, Usma? Sorry, I'm being a bit devil's advocate here, but Councillor Bowden's poked me on it.
I don't think all of it is down to materials. And I think there are some issues that are still prevalent at this moment in time. We've had problems with utilities. We've had problems with COVID as well. And I have spoken to a couple of contractors who have said that COVID has hit them quite a bit because of absence of staff. And that has been one of the problems that has also been reoccurring. COVID doesn't seem to have gone. And where they thought they would be fully staffed, they're not. And therefore they're having to have delays with COVID as well. That's been an ongoing problem. I have spoken to all contractors on all sides. COVID seems to be an issue at the moment.
Right, thank you. Of course, we've got the dreaded flu hitting now, haven't we, as well? Yes, we'd like to come in.
Just to sort of add a little texture to this, there is, as I hasn't specifically mentioned, it's a wider skills issue as well at the moment in the construction industry. a lot of the construction industry was reliant and taking skills from abroad. That has dropped off. So there are some very specific shortages in the industry now around bricklayers, plumbers, even electricians. So that is another factor. So we're in a sort of perfect stormer at the moment with the construction industry. I think in response to your question, Chair, I don't think we're going to recover time back. I think the critical thing is that we don't incur any more delay. And that's something I know that ASMA, I think, is setting a more frequent set of meetings up with the suppliers on the different schemes to get, totally on top of what is happening on every scheme. And that hopefully will give them plenty of focus to ensure that, the temptation, if there is temptation for any drift or delay or resources maybe going to different sites for other reasons, is sort of not necessarily stop, but it makes it more difficult for them. It becomes more apparent if there's blatant sort of delays that might be going on in the delivery of our program. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Okay, so our focus is on avoiding any further slippage. If we feel that there is slippage which is not justified, that is being threatened, what comeback do we have to, which might encourage people to, fully resource these sites in order to, as much as they are able within the constraints, in order to avoid avoidable further slippage?
I'll pick that up initially. I don't know if Rena wants to make any comment about any of the provisions in our grant agreements. This is a situation where there's sort of pragmatic management. I don't think the builders that are delivering our schemes, and they're largely registered providers, want to have their schemes slip. It is my personal view. I think they've got every good reason to want to get on with them and get their schemes delivered. There's always the issue of publicity around these issues that I think is something that, generally speaking, we don't want to throw sort of bricks in greenhouses, but there's always the possibility of that. So they're very much living on their reputations, I think, in terms of delivering what has been promised and contracted. I mean, ultimately, if they don't perform, this might be one for Rena, our grant agreements will be determined, and any money that's been paid we'll have back. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. And very important with this program, we've had very few, kind of think, if any, schemes actually, once we've got them through and got them seemingly started, that they've actually stopped and failed totally. Generally speaking, they are getting delivered, but there is just this delay, and it's frustrating for everyone. I think, to be frank, if we had them in the room, I think that it was frustrating for them as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chair. For my sins, I don't think I need to declare it. As part of my responsibilities at the City Council, I sit on the KIP board, which is the Housing Delivery Aim angle for the City Council with Hill. And the same issues are being faced. But we've managed to get round delays by increasing costs. And I suppose the question that therefore flows from that, is there any capacity to do that? Particularly in mind is it almost becomes a cost benefit analysis, isn't it? Do you want things delivered on time, or do you want to spend more money doing it? Because some of the issues you've outlined, that as outlined, are identical, particularly the cost of steel and the cost of bricklayers is particularly an issue that wasn't accounted for back in the day. So I suppose what I'm asking, to get round to the point, it's that balance between cost versus delivery, and is there any consideration to increasing the costs to make sure we deliver on time? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I'm going to give what I think is the answer, and then I'll revert to Roger. So we are pretty close to the maximum intervention figure, which is acceptable to government at 38,700 at the moment. And the risk is by putting in money in order to speed up delivery that actually we start tipping over that. Is that the right answer?
Yes, but I'll just add to that. It's actually more to do with the quantum, I think, of the money that we've got, and that we have. I think it's approximately £56.5 million that we've expended on this program. We don't have any more money than that to put in. We don't have a reserve sitting there of sort of £2 million to, I don't know, throw a scheme that looks like it's delayed because its costs are becoming an issue. So we have to sort of manage what we've got. So we are constrained still by that. So it's not easy for us to turn around and say, oh, let's give you £5,000 per unit extra on this scheme in order for you to quickly get on with it. We're not really in that position, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. So my understanding is that asthma. I've got an USMA at South Cambs. Asthma is going to be keeping a very close eye on this, and I think that's very reassuring that you're obviously in regular contact with all the developers, and will be reporting back and giving us early sight of anything that looks to be, becoming a bit concerning. Is that fair, Asthma?
No, that's completely correct. I am going out on site visits as well. So I've got a couple of sites that are coming to near completion, which is good news anyway. My main concerns are the ones that I've had meetings with, arranged meetings. So some of our bigger sites are the ones that are causing me concern, and I am onto those at the moment.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm sure you're doing it excellently. Councillor Davey.
Yes, forgive me, Asma. Lewis has asked me, as I'm his deputy today, could you give an update on the Halo schemes? Now, I don't know the history of this, but he was keen to hear what's going on there. Thank you.
So an update on Halo. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, we have a series of schemes with Halo, and we'll bring a more detailed update on this as part of the update at the next meeting, as part of the program update. We had a communication with Halo just in the new year, where they've had some issues with their auditing and certification around their operation. The issue seems to be, from our initial information that they've given us, around really their ownership and the structure that sits around that, rather than the operational side of their business, which seems to be functioning perfectly well. We'll bring an update on that. My initial sort of view is that this doesn't have any immediate operational issue that we need to change anything now. But we're just getting some more information from them on what this means, basically. Sorry, Councillor Bowden's got a question. Sorry, I'm not the chairman, sorry.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chairman. That interests me because in Appendix 2, it does state that the final completion date for at least the Halo site, which I'm interested in, which is Larkfleet, is expected by 31st March 23, which doesn't seem to me to be realistic on what I've seen physically on the ground, but then it's always difficult to tell on a building site. So is that 31st March 23 figure potentially optimistic?
I need to refer to Asma, I think, on the specifics of an individual scheme. But we're not aware that this audit that's come out is affecting their operational activities. So if there is anything going on that scheme, it may be for some of the other reasons we've talked about earlier, but it's not to do with, I think, the issue that Councillor Davey has raised.
Okay. Any other questions? No, jolly good. So the Housing Communities Committee is recommended to note the report and the change to tenure mixes with places for people on the scheme at Luminous Phase Sites 1 and 2. So unless there's any more questions, Councillor Bowden.
Apologies, and if we can just note, because it is quite important, this change in potential the termination of the completion dates from our previous 31st March 24 to 31st March 25.
Thank you. That's been recorded. Yes. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so no votes required. So the report is noted. So moving on to item 2.2, so I'll now ask Roger Thompson, who's our Director of Housing and Development, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the housing loans update report that is presented to every meeting now to track the progress of those loans. As ever, I think I'd refer committee members to the appendices, where there's a very helpful spreadsheet that our finance team has produced. And if you look at the update since last committee sheet, that's probably the key one that shows the activities that have been going on since we met in November. The positive news is that we continue to see repayments both on the Ely MOD scheme, where just under 2.5 million has been repaid during the period, and also the scheme of DCTC at Haddenham, where just over 1.4 million has been repaid. The scheme at Haddenham, we are confidently expecting will be repaid in full with interest before the end of this month. There's one more transaction that I think is already exchanged, actually, that's going through. So that will clear that loan, and we'll be delighted to announce that when that happens. So that will be the third of the 5 loans that will have been fully repaid with the interest due. The other 2 loans are outstanding. The MOD Ely loan is due for repayment on the 31st of March 2022. They're obviously continuing with sales, but whether or not they're going to achieve enough sales to clear the revised balance is a question. So we have actually put an inquiry into them to confirm that they have a sufficient facility in place in order to repay whatever the balance of that loan is going to be at the end of March 2022 in order to repay us our capital. In connection with the scheme at Histon Road with Lara Homes, that loan is due for repayment in May. We are aware that that scheme has been encountering some of the construction delays and issues that we described earlier in the previous report. They're going to get close to the wire, I think, with completing their sales in time to repay that loan. The good news is that I believe they have all of their units reserved, and they have buyers waiting literally to sort of move in. But they need to make sure they complete their construction in time. If not, we will then have to engage a process with our legal team around some enforcement in terms of the repayment of that loan. I have had some discussion with Lara and encouraged them to see if they can make sure they've got a alternative facility in place in the event that they don't sell the sufficient homes in time to totally repay the debt. They have not given me a clear response as to whether or not they're going to have sufficient facility in place if they find they get to May and they can't or haven't completed enough units to repay the loan in full. So that's one to watch, I think, particularly on, well, both of them, but particularly probably on Histon Road, as they're still finishing, trying to finish their build out. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. But my understanding is that if people default on their repayments, then there's a punitive increase in the interest rate. So it's in their interest to do so. Thank you. Councillor Bowden.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. First of all, just a matter of correction for the record. I think twice the Director mentioned March 22 as being the completion. I think it was meant March 23 for that. And as far as default is concerned, default would occur on the 31st of March 2023 if repayment hasn't been made by that time. And are we going to be absolutely rigid about that and say that is the default date? And if it's one day over, well, obviously if it's one day over, it's a different matter. But at what point do we start taking action, please? That's my first. I do have a second question.
Thank you. Yes, there'll be, if the loan's not repaid under the terms of the facility agreement, 1 minute past midnight on the what will be the 1st of April, the loan will be in default. We've looked into this process previously because we had this situation develop with one of the loans previously where they ended up being about 3.5 weeks late with the repayment, which was the former Alexander House in Ely. So our legal team sort of understands the process through which we need to start to engage. But initially, the process is one around obviously giving some notices and making the borrower aware that they're in default. There's a process that you need to go through to sort of reasonably do that before you can actually get to the stage where you want to go to court and start taking actions. That actually gives them time to sort themselves out. But what I'm trying to do in my communications with them is to ensure we don't get a default, and that actually, if they think they are not going to sell sufficient units in time to repay the debt, to get other facilities in place so we don't go down that route. There is an incentive, as the chair has said, and that there's a penal rate of interest in the facility agreement. Yeah, we hope, if they're listening, that they will perform. And if they think there's a risk of not being able to repay through the sales, then get those facilities in place. And now's the time to do it, because there's time to do it now. It's not much good doing it, to be frank, on the 28th of March. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy with that answer. Thank you. And as far as Histon Road is concerned, is the date for that 31st of May 2023?
I think the date is the 7th of May, if I've got that right. Yeah.
So I think I think we're on top of it. We can't make people answer the questions if they don't want to, but I think we have a legal process in place that is robust and has already been trialled. I mean, Histon Road is a very desirable development, and I'm pleased to hear that they've sold everything off plan. But so there's not a lot of excuse there. But any other questions from anybody? So, for the benefit of people who haven't been part of this committee before, as the money comes back in, what then happens to it?
Well, I know Ian's on the call, but basically in the deal that we did with government, what we're doing is that as the money is returned from these loans, we are effectively recycling that money and using that money to pay the grants for ASMA's affordable housing program. Now, the fact that there's some slight delay in one or two of the completions on her program maybe gives more headroom in the cash flow that Ian Pantling manages around when the money goes out, because a lot of the money goes out on completion. As there's some delayed completions, as we probably see in our medium-term financial plan, there's some delay in some of the capital money being expended on the program. It will be expended. It's just not maybe, instead of being expended in December 22 for a completion, it might now be expended on a project in March 23 because it's 3 months late. So we're seeing examples of that through the program. But basically, the money is all committed. So the money we're getting in, it is pre-committed to go out as a grant on the affordable housing program.
Councillor Bowden.
Thank you, Chair. So just to summarise for those who are listening and those who are attending today, that means we've effectively got two lots of homes for the price of one for those amounts of money. First of all, we've managed to get homes through a loan, and then we've used the same money in order to get a direct subsidy given for a further lot of homes.
Correct, yeah.
Excellent. Right. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any more questions on this? No? Okay. So, right, the Housing and Communities Committee is recommended to note the current position in respect of outstanding loan repayments required to fund the 2021-22 affordable housing programme. Is that still correct? It says 21-22.
It should actually be referring to 23 again.
Right. Okay. So so if we could just make that correction, please, if that's in the papers. So to fund the 21-22 affordable housing programme. So this report is for noting, and members agree to note it. Thank you. And then item 2.3 is the Housing Communities Agenda Plan. And are there any comments from anybody on the agenda plan? Yes, Roger. Thank you.
Just make the committee aware there will actually be one other item coming in March, whether form the committee is going to take, and that's going to be, I know it's just been put on the forward plan, and it's a paper around the continuing support for community housing and a review of the performance and the contract with Eastern Community Homes. So that will be appearing on the forward plan agenda. Apologies, it hasn't got onto the formal paper for today. Thank you.
That's fine. Yes, obviously it's all change here. Hopefully it'll be change for the better, but obviously housing remains a priority. And while we have, substantial sums of money available to build affordable homes, then we shall continue to do so. Can if I could just refer. Right, so in an impressively short period of time, thank you very much, members, we seem to have come to the end of the agenda. So as Roger just said, the committee is due to meet next on the 13th of March 2023, and the arrangements for that will be confirmed nearer the time. So I declare this meeting closed, and many thanks to officers and to members for their attention. Thank you.